everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Alexis, and today it is time for episode 7 of Ask a Trans Woman. Got a whole bunch of fun questions this week, including one submitted by one of my children. So we'll see how that goes.
Question number 1. How many tattoos do you have?
Currently, I have 4 tattoos. This is my, can we see?
Yes.
This is my first. I will save that story for another day. My second is my Bad Batch tattoo, which we've discussed previously on the channel. The third I can't show you because I have to take my shirt off, but it's all across my back. It, of course, says courage and kindness. My most recent tattoo is this one here, and it's 0 from Nightmare Before Christmas, and it has the names of the 3 dogs that I've had in my life that have passed. However, I'm working on a 5th. It's going to be a waffle fighting a pancake, and it's going to go right underneath here.
I believe you are not the next person in our family that is to receive a tattoo.
Yeah, that's the other problem. Lindsay gets the next one, so.
Moving on. Building off of the tattoo question, we'll get this one out of the way. What was your most painful tattoo?
What was my most painful tattoo? Okay, so now you'd think that it would be my back. It wasn't. The most painful really, the thing about tattoo pain is it has everything to do with location. So my back tattoo at times didn't hurt at all. I barely felt it. It took about 2.5, maybe 3 hours, and really the only spots where I actively felt, the needle and all of that is the closer it got to the ends of my shoulders, so like here and here, but also this one here, this particular section, the end of the stem where a lot of nerve endings are, that's when you feel it. So it's if you're closer to a bone or close to nerve endings. So like, and actually also here, when she was doing the lettering on this particular area right here, because there is a nerve, like I think it's your ulnar nerve, that runs all the way along the side of your arm. And so because it was so close to the nerve, that's when I was really starting to feel it. It's not like, for me personally, tattoos are not that bad. I haven't done ribs or sternum, which I've heard are just pure hell, and that's coming from the tattoo artist. So those are probably the areas I'm going to avoid, but so far, not too bad.
Question number 3. Was it difficult for you to adjust to referring to yourself using your new pronouns early in transition?
The question is, was it difficult for me to adjust to my pronouns? Absolutely. I still screw up. It's kind of funny. My brain still hasn't fully adjusted. And it's because I think a lot of that is dysphoria. Because no matter how other people tend to see you, and if you follow me on Twitter, anytime I get a compliment, I'm like, so just using a really generic example, like, oh, you're so pretty. And I'm like, I'm really not, though. I'm my own worst critic. And so what everyone else sees, even right now in this camera, you probably don't see any beard shadow, anything like that. I just shaved right before I got on camera. It's all I see when I look in the mirror. So I'm constantly still thinking of myself as my necronym, to quote a friend. It's a new term that I'd like to really push out there. Necronym as opposed to dead name. Just sounds a lot cooler. So I still kind of at times think of that myself in that way in my head. So I will I will misgender myself and use the wrong pronouns and just let them slip. And it happens way too far often than I'd like to admit. But I'm working on that myself. And it's just it comes with self-acceptance. And it's something you really need to work on as a trans person yourself, is just understanding that you, as you're transitioning, it's okay. You need to let go of that old life and that old identity.
What are Zai and Them pronouns, and what are fae and faer pronouns?
Okay.
So sorry if I said those wrong.
So I'm not really sure how to pronounce them either, but basically what we're talking about in general is a concept called neopronouns. These are essentially new pronouns. That's what neopronouns means. And neopronouns are a relatively new thing that comes largely out of the non-binary space of the transgender community. And it's just people that don't feel, they don't identify well with traditional pronouns, meaning he, him, she, her, or they, them in the singular form. So people have adopted new pronouns, some of which they've come up with on their own. Other people have come up with other ones that they adopt. There's a litany of them out there, and every one of them is valid. If you have a particular pronoun that you prefer, let me stop there. The term preferred pronouns, let's stop using it. If you have pronouns you use, those are valid. Tell people what those are. If they don't know them, they don't know how to pronounce them, help them learn. Because I will say this, your pronouns are valid, but they are not part of common lexicon. They're not part of the everyday language yet. We're getting there, but they're not there yet. So a little bit of the burden is going to be on you, mostly because people just don't know them yet. Not that they don't know your pronouns, but they may have never heard of, say, like, the fae pronouns at all. It comes completely out of left field for them, and it's okay that they don't know. We have to stop blaming people for legitimate ignorance. I know this is going to be controversial, and I'm sorry, but legitimate ignorance, meaning people literally do not know because they've never been exposed to something like this, it's its own separate conversation. But don't get mad at someone if you use neopronouns that no one's ever heard of, that maybe you've come up with yourself, because it's just not out there. So we're working on representation. We are pushing hard for this sort of thing. But it takes time. And so we need to be a little bit more patient, just as a community. Somebody misgenders you with, and your pronouns are pretty damn obvious, give them the ones for. They deserve it.
Question number 5. This person wasn't sure if you were working as a Lego builder before transition, so they started with that.
Okay.
But living as a woman now, do you feel like you've been treated differently at work than you used to be?
Okay. So I did give kind of an initial response to this question in the comment section, which if you have questions for any of these episodes, please leave them in the comments below. We go through them. This is where we pull all of our questions from. So please leave them in the comments below or on Twitter. We also take them on Twitter. So, have I been treated differently at work since coming out? Well, at my current job, no, because I've always been Alexis at this job. I applied as Alexis, and I interviewed as Alexis. They've never known. The only people that know my necronym are HR, but basically anyone that gets to see my legal paperwork. And it's just because I haven't changed my legal name yet. That'll slowly happen. It's a process. So, in that sense, no, I haven't been treated differently. However, I work at a very inclusive company in Merlin Entertainments. So I don't talk that much about work anymore. I used to on this channel before we did a reboot. But Merlin has always, at least since I've been a part of Merlin, has always been wonderful with trans people. I know part of that credit goes to, at least for my local shop, goes to my friend Pat. Pat transitioned while on the job, and her transition has had some stops and starts because of insurance issues and things like that. But the one thing that I have noticed that has never changed is everyone on the team refers to her with her pronouns, genders her correctly all the time. There are no issues there. There's never, and from my understanding, there has never been an issue. And a lot of that has to do with just hiring good people. Now, in previous jobs, I can honestly say, because I'm very fortunate in that I live in a very liberal sector of an otherwise very not liberal state in Florida. So here in Central Florida, particularly like the Orlando core and like what we call Orange County, Osceola County, things are pretty liberal. You still run into plenty of bigots, but they're far outnumbered, and so they tend to keep their mouths shut. So when I was first going to transition, I did have conversations with my employer at the time, a local mid-sized ad agency. And I spoke first with my direct boss, but then later with the actual owners of the agency, and every one of them was immediately supportive. Asked for my name and pronouns, asked how I'd like to be like referred to. Would I like an announcement or anything like that? And they were very, very open to working with me about it. Unfortunately, as I've talked about on this show, I ended up not transitioning at that time because of some issues. So I never got to experience that, but I have no doubt that I would have had a very wonderful experience. At the time, we were doing work for the One Pulse Foundation, as well as they've since done work for a local doctor's office that caters specifically to the LGBTQ community. That is not Spectrum, the one I go to. So I know that they're very LGBTQ friendly. So I wasn't too worried, and a lot of places like throughout town are very, very similar.
All right, question number 6. Does where you buy your makeup matter as much as what brand you use?
That's an excellent question. Does where you buy your makeup matter versus what brand you use? And I guess I'd say the question is yes and no. Because if you're buying, some brands are only sold at certain stores. Case in point, I use a lot of Morphe products. You can't buy Morphe outside of Morphe stores and Ulta. So if you keep trying to buy your Morphe products at Target, you're gonna have a bad time because they don't sell it. The type of product that you use, the brand that you use, is ultimately what matters. So if you have no problem buying on Amazon and you know you're getting it from a legitimate seller, if that's where you want to get your makeup from and it's the brand you want and the brands that work for you, then use it. But you don't have to shop at Sephora. As much as Sephora is a wonderful experience, but it's very pricey. So they used to even, and maybe I think they still do, they do again now that the pandemic's not as bad. It's not over. I don't think it's ever going to be over. But things have reopened enough that they're willing to do kind of like the in-person demos, that sort of thing. And so one of the services they used to do, and I believe they still do, is if you made a purchase of a certain dollar amount, you could actually get essentially a full makeover. And they would use, they'll use whatever products, they recommend. And the whole idea is like to get you to try probably like the more expensive stuff. They'll do your whole face, and then hopefully you've been paying attention, and they say like, oh, these are the things we used, and you go buy them. That's the goal for them. For me, it was an opportunity, and this is going back 5-6 years now. It was an opportunity to really see myself in a feminine way for the first time, because my initial attempts at makeup were a disaster. So having someone professionally do it, it opened my eyes to what was possible. And so in that sense, I do recommend going to a more higher end store. Maybe it's not Sephora, maybe go talk to, the artists at your local Morphe store. I know there aren't that many of them, so give Ulta a try. You might not get to do that full experience, but they can show you how to do things. And that means the absolute world for you to understand, no, you need this type of product for your skin type, your skin tone, whether or not something is going to work for like how your eyes are, because I don't wear a lot of eyeshadow because I have severely hooded eyes. It basically disappears. So knowing what works for you is most important in it. That's when talking to professionals really comes in handy.
Question number 7. You mentioned that right before this you shaved. Do you have any tips for shaving?
I do have a few tips for shaving. I do things a little bit differently than probably most people do, in the sense that I very rarely use a razor on my face. In the sense that, and when I say razor, I mean like a traditional razor. I don't use like your standard, metal one. I actually use an electric. That's largely out of convenience, but I'm a huge fan of the Norelco one blade. The only downside is because I shave every day, I have to replace the blade probably more often than I'd like. Because what I've found is, even though like it has a thing where like the blade, the electric blade has like a little strip on it that'll eventually turn green, and that's like, hey, that's when you're supposed to change your blade. I would probably change it more frequently than that, just because I find it to be less effective. That being said, a few months ago, I saw a post on Twitter from a friend who recommended trying the Billy razor brand for my face. And she was talking to everyone in general, but I did it. And I have to say, I've shaved my face with a regular razor before. I used to hate doing it because it was always uncomfortable. Using the Billy brand razor on my face was magical. I absolutely, like, it's great for body hair and everything like that. That's what it's designed for. But it's just incredibly smooth. It's, I believe, a 5-bladed razor, so it's really high quality. You're going to get a very, very close shave. So they have, I'll drop a link in the description, a variety of different options, but you can also get it at like Walmart and I think possibly Target, but I know for sure they sell it at Walmart, where you don't have to do the subscription if you don't want to, but they do have some like limited edition, like if you really care about having like a sparkly purple one, they only sell it online. So I'll drop a link in the description there for you.
What was your high school experience like as a trans woman?
What was my high school experience like as a trans woman? So this is kind of a weird question because I was not out in high school, nor did I really have an idea that I was trans in high school. Interestingly enough, apparently my high school girlfriend did. We're still friends, and I had a conversation with her not that long after I came out, especially the second time. Or actually, no, it was the first time, because I was living on my own, and we had kind of rekindled our friendship. And one night I was just like, "So, did you know?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." I don't think we had the terminology yet because we were high schoolers and we hadn't been exposed to, being trans is still a relatively new concept for society as a whole. It's been around for a long time, but mainstream society is really just kind of catching on in the last 5-6 years. So we didn't know the term then, but she knew that something was different about me and my gender presentation. And I think it just makes me wonder, did a lot of people see that? Because at the time, I was the first, I'm going to misgender myself essentially, but we're talking about my past here. I was the first boy in my school's history to be in the color guard. And I was really good at it. So much so that a judge in a state competition offered me a spot in a drum corps on the judge's tape. So it felt very natural, and I stood out amongst all the other girls as being the most graceful, which is like, I was very comfortable. My first experience with makeup was in that sense as well, and I remember distinctly that same competition, it was because usually for the competitions I didn't wear makeup, but because this was such a big deal, they wanted me to wear it, and I was like, yeah, if that's what we need to do, then it's fine. I remember it being put on and it feeling right. I don't know if I've ever talked with anyone about this. Actually, this is the first time. Like, my wife is looking at me right now like, where is this story? We've never discussed this. Yeah. This is that was a weird time, because it just, maybe that's when my egg cracked and I didn't have the words for it. But yeah, I was very comfortable being, and even in high school for a long time, I talked openly about how I was bisexual. I did not hide that once I had come to that realization myself. So it all kind of fits, but at the time, I was a social outcast in high school, but because I was a band kid in a school of, like, I think we were nearly 2,000 kids just in my graduating class, if you put it all together. So I wasn't, like, made fun of or picked on because I was trans, or even because I was gay, or I actually grew up in a really liberal part of Illinois. So I never had that sort of bad experience. But yeah, it was eye-opening to have certain experiences that were usually seen as female experiences or girl experiences as a boy. But looking back on it, it all makes sense.
Just a fun question. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
What is my favorite ice cream flavor? I don't know if my true favorite ice cream flavor is readily available. It's hard because I can't remember exactly how I had this. But if you could take mint chocolate chip and add, like, a double chocolate chip cookie dough, that would be perfection. As far as commercially available ones, of all, it kind of seems like out of left field, but pistachio. It's hard to find, actually. But especially, like, when Menchie's does it, oh, it's like my favorite time to go to Menchie's is getting pistachio ice cream. It's so good. And then I put almonds on top for extra protein.
How do you feel about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade?
Someone actually asked that?
Someone asked that.
I missed these. So the Roe v. Wade, I've been discussing this today at work, so it's kind of right on my mind. Roe v. Wade being overturned is a political disaster, but more so it's just a pure disaster for American people. I don't think, or what scares me is I'm wrong in this assumption that conservatives don't understand what they've done. And what's really scary is if they do understand what they've done, the consequences are even worse, because it's going to hit them hard and they're not ready for it. We've seen what happens when conservatives get surprised by outcomes. Just look at January 6th. They don't handle this well. Abortions are going to happen no matter what. That's the reality of it. They're just not going to be legal in some states. And that's going to lead to a lot more injury and a lot more death. That alone is a horrific consequence of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But the more serious consequence, not that what I just said isn't serious, the far more serious consequence is Roe v. Wade. The overturning of Roe v. Wade was the canary in the coal mine. It always was, and that's why we've been so protective of it. They're going after gay marriage next. Probably after that, just being gay in general. And it wouldn't shock me if they go after interracial marriage too. Depends on just how self-hating Clarence Thomas it really is. But they're going to try everything. And that's absolutely terrifying. We tried to warn you. The queer community has been trying to warn you for years just how important this was. And I think most of you understood. Roe v. Wade was deeply unpopular, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade was deeply unpopular throughout the country, both amongst conservatives and liberals. This was an ultra-conservative group of judges, and it's just flat out wrong. They have an agenda for America that does not match what the people want. At least the vast majority of what people want. So, I really have nothing else to add other than it's deeply fucked up. And if it's not fixed, and if the Democrats currently in power don't do their fucking jobs, it's only going to get worse. Because they can fundraise all they want, which is despicable that they're fundraising off of this. But if they can fundraise all they want, we're going to show up to the polls, but they need to do their damn jobs. We put them in power to prevent this, and they failed. And they need to understand that at some point, there will be consequences. I don't know what those consequences will be, but I'm really hoping things don't get worse. Please tell me we have a lighter question now.
We do.
Thank God.
This question was submitted in bonus round by our daughter, Kendall. What's your absolute favorite part when doing your makeup?
What is my absolute favorite part when doing my... This is a really good question.
I thought so.
So, little secret when it comes to my makeup. Now, I am perfectly capable of doing my own makeup. I want to make that very clear. I know how to do it. I'm just lazy. And I like to be pampered. So, typically, I let if we have the time, Lindsay will actually do my foundation and concealer. Actually, right now, I'm only wearing concealer. I did it myself because But for me, my favorite part of doing my makeup is putting on my lipstick. Because, and this is probably going to seem a little sexist, and it's not intentional, it's just this is how I've been socialized. When I have foundation on, when I have concealer on, and I can see my face, I see a little bit of that femininity. When I add the mascara, it enhances the femininity. But when I put on that bright, bold red lip that has become kind of my signature color, you can see it on the screen there, that's when everything clicks into place. And so, and it's not even just like, oh, it has to be all done and it has to be perfect. No. Because I use a two-step process. I will do completely, I just learned this trick, completely cover my lips with lip liner, with a pencil, before putting the lipstick on. I used to just do the lip liner on the outside, and that's still valid, but I actually use basically the same color. And so the first swipe, and I can see that pop of color, I feel it's like the movie Pleasantville. If you remember that, if you're old enough to remember Pleasantville. This scene, because it's a movie that's in black and it's a modern film, but it's color graded so that it's black and white. But then over time, color starts to pop into the world. And it's that kind of moment for me, is as soon as I put that pop of color on, I brighten up. And it's a really wonderful feeling. And it's when the dysphoria kind of melts away a little bit, even if it's just for a moment. But that's, especially once I finish and I catch myself in the mirror, even before I put on the headband or anything like that, it's like, oh, like sometimes in my Instagram reels and stuff, I'll be like, oh, there she is. That is really how I feel. Alexis really comes alive when that red lip comes on. So that's when I jokingly say, I'm always Alexis, but when I'm in full makeup mode, that's when Lexi comes out. She's a little bit more sassy. That is all the questions we have for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this one was fun. did get a little spicy there for a minute, but, you know, it's Roe v. Wade, so it deserves it. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Click that thumbs up button. And if you really enjoy this content, you want to see more of it, you want to make sure we continue, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's how we spread our content. It really helps us grow. So thank you. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. And of course, as always, have courage and be kind, especially to yourself.